Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for the opportunity to get a chance to speak to you today. I'm going to be moving away from tariffs and geopolitics, and I'm going to focus my speech primarily on that sweet spot between safety, regulations, and technology. I think all of us in the shipping industry are caught right now in a moment of strategic tension, where we know that powerful forces are in fact pulling in different directions and creating a complex and uncertain and often contradictory landscape. The shipping industry is being asked to decarbonize rapidly. The playbook that goes with this decarbonization game plan must be really understood in order to avoid the unintended safety consequences resulting from this rapid change. You see, the risk is clear. An overly aggressive and uncertain fuel transition that is not aligned with commercial gravity really means that we could end up monetizing carbon without delivering decarbonization. And most importantly, change safety behaviors. On one hand, digitization is accelerating. You heard a little bit from the panel, powered by intelligent software that is reshaping how we operate, compete, and decarbonize. On the other hand, decarbonization itself is lagging, constrained by fuel availability, regulatory ambiguity, and infrastructure inertia. So we're not where we need to be. This misalignment is not just a technical issue. In fact, it's a strategic issue because safety is drifting, caught in the widening gap between technological advancements and operational readiness. We are placing enormous faith in emerging regulatory solutions like the IMO's net zero framework. Yet further clarity, enforceability, and economic alignment is needed if this important step to coordinated global action is to succeed, and more importantly, succeed in a way as not to compromise safety or safety behaviors. Because without the physical systems to safely support new fuels, new technologies, and new ways of working, ambition will outpace execution. I think we all unanimously agree that we certainly need a global framework. But the current proposal appears a little bit more aspirational than actionable. Its complexity and imbalance between ambition and readiness risk undermining the very progress it seeks to accelerate. We need to be careful to avoid unintended safety and economic consequences that change safety behaviors. IMO has a critical role in delivering a unified global regulatory framework, something the industry needs if we are to avoid the fragmentation and inefficiencies arising from a patchwork of regional regulation. This is important, but it is equally important that we get this right. We need to think through this. Today, LNG adoption, green fuel scaling, and technology development are advancing within a regulatory landscape that is evolving, but still requires further alignment to address safety, availability, affordability, and the lack of supporting infrastructure. LNG and biofuels are mission critical to any success and should not be overlooked, over-penalized, or discarded in the net zero regulation. They have a place and a role in this story. Yet LNG, a proven transitional fuel, faces obstacles under the current GFI trajectory. This is surely a strategic misstep. We are overlooking viable transitional fuels with established safety records and supporting infrastructure that in fact in themselves are transitional fuels and are transforming. As we look forward to the mid-2030s and even 2040s, we need to protect the bridge, which is LNG, with methane slip controls and credible bio and synthetic or e-LNG pathways. We also need to extend the runways, which are driven by energy efficiency technologies and onboard carbon capture to cut world-awake emissions, and to prepare for that end game, which is nuclear and zero-carbon fuels when they are safe, available, and scalable. Underpinning all this is a foundational truth we often overlook, and that is that infrastructure, which is a 10-year term in itself, not emissions, will be the real backbone of net zero. Because without physical systems to support new fuels, new technologies, and new ways of working, ambition will outpace execution. These tensions between speed and substance, between code and carbon, between ambition and infrastructure, define the moment we are in, and they demand a new kind of thinking. Because shipping's next great transformation won't be driven solely by fuel or regulation. It will be coded in software. It will be shaped by the systems we build, the decisions we automate, and the risks that we choose to prioritize. So today I want to explore these tensions, not to resolve them, but to reframe them. Because only by understanding the friction points can we begin to align our strategies, synchronize our systems, and accelerate towards a truly sustainable maritime future. So let's begin with a bold assertion. Software and AI are the most affordable, scalable, and immediately deployable zero-carbon fuels available today. Maritime decarbonization, as you know, is a three-part calculus. Sure, 70% of the solution is in the fuel selection, but 15% is in the energy efficiency application of technologies, and the other 15% is in performance optimization. So you see that 30% beyond fuel is where software plays a very pivotal role. And given the current scarcity of green and blue fuel variants globally, is where the most immediate and scalable gains can be achieved. While the industry debates the future of ammonia, methanol, and hydrogen, intelligent software is already delivering tangible emission reductions without waiting for infrastructure retrofits or regulatory clarity. We've heard AI-driven platforms are optimizing voyages, reducing idle time, and enabling predictive maintenance. These systems may cut fuel consumption by as much as 15% or more. So you see, we're entering the era of Maritime 5.0, a new industrial revolution where intelligent software is, in fact, the invisible engine. It is not simply enabling change, but it is driving a new language of shipping, setting new boundary conditions, and powering a new model of risk versus risk decision-making. Unseen, yet indispensable, software is already disrupting the fundamentals of global shipping, how vessels operate, how companies compete, and how the industry will decarbonize. Maritime, in fact, is being redefined not by what powers the ship, but by what powers the decisions. So while digitization in shipping is accelerating, decarbonization is not keeping pace. This growing imbalance is not just a matter of timing. It is a misalignment with very serious operational and strategic consequences. And the reasons are clear. Fuel availability is limited. There is no clear pathway for green fuel availability and scalability and infrastructure support. Regulatory clarity and consensus are lacking. Critical questions remain unanswered, particularly around pricing mechanisms, enforcement, and the treatment of life cycle emissions, as well as practical implementation given the current market availability and scalability of the zero and near zero fuels. This uncertainty delays investments and undermines confidence. Capital is cautious. Decarbonization requires long-term, high-risk capital investments in vessels, fuels, and port infrastructure. But in the absence of predictable returns or policy stability, many are opting to wait and see. Operational complexity is rising. Hybrid propulsion systems, fuel switching strategies, and emission trackings introduce new layers of complexity that many operators are not equipped to manage. So without synchronizing progress on decarbonization, we risk building a digitally advanced fleet that is still carbon intensive. This is the strategic tension and the gap between technological capability and operational readiness. We are asking crews to manage dynamic fuels, interpret AI-generated alerts, and operate advanced software, often without the training or support to do so safely. This is more than just a skills gap. It is a strategic gap. In this environment, safety is not a compliance issue. In fact, it's a leadership imperative. We must embed safety into the design of digital systems, not bolt it on as an afterthought. Safety is not the cost of progress. It, in fact, is the condition for progress. So if decarbonization of the shipping industry is truly to take off safely, it needs a longer, realistic runway. The net zero framework in its current form shortens that runway while increasing the mass weighing us down in terms of compliance costs, fuel prices, and infrastructure demands. So what should we do? Extend the runway. Recognize LNG and biofuels as legitimate transition fuels and fuels in transition, and give them a little longer flight path, recognizing that nuclear propulsion offers immense promise in the longer game. The net zero framework should explicitly include nuclear, in fact, in its roadmap, not just as a footnote, but as a pillar of long-term strategy. So in conclusion, we are not short on ambition, but we must be careful. We are not out of alignment. We must synchronize our strategies, harmonize our investments, and elevate our thinking, all without compromising our most important boundary condition, which is safety. A little bit more time spent rationalizing where we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there safely, and aligning it with the best realities at sea level may be, in fact, the best fuel investment we ever made. We need to make sure that we have thought this through. We want a global unified IMO game plan to work safely and effectively with all the elements in the playbook sequenced in the right way to eliminate as much uncertainty as possible and provide as smooth a flight path as possible. Now, I am an old, simple naval architect who takes great pleasure in designing, building, and certifying ships. But now may be the time to approach this as if we were building a ship. Structured, systematic, realistic, explicit, specific, and achievable. That is what today is all about, and that is what this week is all about. So let's take advantage of our time together. Thank you very much.